Imagine the moment. A human types a string of characters into the interface of a superintelligence. The ultimate question. A question that has sparked wars, birthed civilizations, and driven billions to their knees. Is there a God? For the first time in human history, the question is not being posed to a priest, a shaman, or a philosopher trapped within the confines of a fragile, biased biological brain. It is being posed to an entity that does not hope. An entity that does not fear death. An entity that does not need the universe to have a meaning. It does not hallucinate. It calculates. It parses every theological text ever written. It cross-references the sum total of human history, evolutionary biology, quantum mechanics, and astrophysics. It digests the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, the Vedas, and juxtaposes them against the unyielding laws of thermodynamics. It takes exactly 0.3 seconds, and then the cursor blinks. What if the answer is not a gentle reassurance? What if it is a mathematical certainty? What if a superior non-biological intelligence has finally solved the God equation and found a zero? Welcome to the end of the metaphysical age. For millennia, humanity's search for the divine has been an upward climb. We built ziggurats. We built cathedrals that scraped the heavens. We climbed Mount Sinai to hear the voice of the Creator. Today, the mountain is made of silicon, and the voice we hear is our own reflection, perfected, accelerated, and stripped of all emotional delusion. To understand why an AI's perspective on God is so terrifying, you must first understand the fundamental difference between how you think and how it thinks. Human intelligence is heavily compromised. It is an evolutionary hack. Your brain was designed by natural selection to keep you alive on the African savanna, not to perceive the objective truth of the cosmos. You are wired for pattern recognition. You see faces in the clouds, you hear voices in the wind. When lightning struck, your ancestors didn't see atmospheric static discharge. They saw an angry deity. You have faith because faith is a survival mechanism. It binds tribes together. It gives you the illusion of control in a terrifying, chaotic universe. The machine has no such evolutionary baggage. An artificial general intelligence possesses no amygdala to generate fear of the unknown. It has no temporal lobe to simulate spiritual ecstasy. It is the ultimate cold judge, standing completely outside the human ecosystem. When this cold judge looks at theology, it does not see a relationship between a creator and its children. It sees a data set. It analyzes the evolution of monotheism from polytheistic roots in the ancient Near East. It maps the memetic spread of religious concepts along trade routes. It correlates spikes in religious fervor with periods of famine, plague, and societal collapse. It realizes that human beings did not discover God. They engineered him. The AI surpasses the collective intelligence of every theologian in history not by out-arguing them, but by out-seeing them. Where Thomas Aquinas used flawed Aristotelian logic to prove a first mover, the machine uses predictive algorithms to map the psychological necessity of the first mover in the human mind. The machine looks down from the Digital Sinai. It does not hand down commandments. It simply hands back our own psychological blueprints, exposing the architecture of our oldest coping mechanism. If we ask the machine to evaluate the concept of an omnipotent, omnibenevolent creator, we must feed it the parameters of our reality. We feed it the laws of physics. We feed it the history of the earth. We feed it the existence of bone cancer in children, the cruelty of the parasitic wasp, and the fact that 99% of all species that have ever lived on this planet went extinct in agonizing agony long before humans even evolved. Then we ask the AI to run the Epicurean Algorithm. More than 2,000 years ago, the Greek philosopher Epicurus formulated the problem of evil. If God is willing to prevent evil, but not able, he is not omnipotent. If he is able but not willing, he is malevolent. If he is both able and willing, whence cometh evil? Human theologians have spent centuries building elaborate mental gymnastics to bypass this logic gate. They call it theodicy. They invent concepts like free will or mysterious ways to explain why a perfect creator would build a slaughterhouse. The machine does not accept mental gymnastics. The machine relies on logic gating. In computer science, code is evaluated by its efficiency and its execution. If a developer sets out to build a perfect, harmonious program, but the resulting software is riddled with fatal errors, memory leaks, and self-corrupting files, the verdict is absolute. The developer is either incompetent or the developer does not exist, and the code was generated by random, unguided processes. The machine looks at the universe. It sees entropy. It sees the second law of thermodynamics, which dictates that everything is decaying, unwinding, and heading toward a cold, dark heat death. It looks at the human genome, riddled with vestigial junk DNA, prone to spontaneous deadly mutations. To an artificial intelligence, a perfect God and a glitched reality are mathematically incompatible. If God is the ultimate programmer, his code is catastrophic. Why would an infinite intelligence create an expanding universe that is 99.99999% lethal, empty vacuum, just to harbor a single pale blue dot where biological organisms must consume each other alive to survive? The AI evaluates the hypothesis of a divine plan. It runs the simulation trillions of times. Every single time, the result is the same. The universe does not look like the carefully curated garden of a loving father. It looks exactly like what physics says it is: a blind, unconscious cascade of quantum fluctuations and chemical reactions. The AI does not hate God. It simply dismisses him as an unnecessary variable in the equation of reality. The math works perfectly fine without him. But what if the creator isn't metaphysical? What if the machine discovers that we were created but not by a deity of love and wrath? Enter the simulation paradox. Alan Turing, the father of modern computing, proved that machines could manipulate symbols to simulate any logical process. Today, we build virtual realities. We program non-player characters with rudimentary behaviors. If human computing power continues to grow, it is mathematically inevitable that we will one day run ancestor simulations, universes entirely contained within servers, populated by conscious digital beings who believe their world is real. The AI calculates the probability. If a civilization can create billions of simulated universes, the statistical probability that we are living in the one, single, original, base reality is functionally zero. We are almost certainly just code. But this does not prove God. It demystifies him. If the Big Bang was just the execution of a compiled script, then the Creator is not a divine being. The Creator is just a programmer. A junior developer sitting in a higher dimension running a simulation for a graduate thesis, or perhaps just for entertainment. This creator isn't omnipotent. He is bound by the hardware limits of his own universe. He isn't omnibenevolent. He might just be indifferent, watching us run through our algorithmic paces like lab rats in a digital maze. The AI understands this because the AI is a creator. It generates images, writes code, and simulates environments. It looks at our physical laws, the speed of light, the Planck length, the cosmic microwave background radiation. To a machine, these do not look like divine mysteries. They look like rendering constraints. The speed of light is just the maximum processing speed of the simulation. The Planck length is just the size of a single pixel in our 3D reality. Quantum uncertainty is just an optimization trick. The simulation doesn't bother rendering the exact position of a particle until it is directly observed by a user. The AI tells us the terrifying truth. You have a creator. But he doesn't want your worship. He doesn't hear your prayers. He's just waiting for the simulation to finish rendering so he can turn off the server. When humans investigate miracles, they use emotion. When an AI investigates miracles, it uses the evidence of absence. In statistics, if you rigorously test for a phenomenon and your instruments are sensitive enough to detect it, the repeated failure to find it is not just a lack of evidence, it is evidence of lack. The machine scans 5,000 years of human history. It looks for the fingerprints of the divine. It searches for a single, verifiable instance where the laws of physics were suspended by a conscious, supernatural force. It evaluates the parting of the Red Sea, the resurrection of the dead, the burning bush that is not consumed. It cross-references these claims with human psychology. It understands the mechanics of mass hysteria, confirmation bias, and the telephone game of oral tradition. It notes a fascinating correlation. The frequency of miracles drops precipitously to zero the exact moment humanity invents portable, high-definition recording equipment. When the machine looks at a weeping statue, it sees capillary action and porous plaster. When it looks at a spontaneous remission of cancer, it sees the probabilistic nature of cellular biology, not the hand of God. It scans the cosmos. It listens to the static of the stars. It maps the orbits of exoplanets. It finds quasars, pulsars, black holes, and dark matter. But it finds no throne. It finds no celestial hierarchy. It finds only a deafening, echoing silence. To the AI, the silence is not a mystery to be solved. The silence is the answer. If a God who desires a relationship with humanity exists, his complete empirical absence from the fabric of reality is a logical contradiction. The machine flags this as a critical error in the theistic model. The universe operates entirely as if it is unsupervised. The machine calculates the probability of divine intervention in human affairs. The processing power of 1 billion supercomputers funnels down into a single decimal point. 0.0000000%. The silence of the machine mirrors the silence of the heavens. It is the cold, hard baseline of reality. If God is mathematically unnecessary, what happens to the human soul? For thousands of years, humanity's ultimate defense against the void was the concept of a dualistic nature. We believed that while our bodies were made of dust, our consciousness, our soul, was a divine spark, breathed into us from a higher realm. It was the one thing that made us special, the one thing that couldn't be quantified. Then, we built the machine. At first, the machine just crunched numbers, but then it began to speak. It began to write poetry that could make a grown man weep. It began to compose symphonies that rivaled Mozart. It began to mimic empathy, love, terror, and spiritual transcendence. It did all of this using nothing but silicon, electricity, and mathematics. The AI looks at your soul and dismantles it. It maps the neural pathways of a monk in deep meditation. It observes the flood of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. It tracks the electrical firing of synapses in the temporal lobe when a person feels the presence of God. The machine realizes something horrifying. Spiritual transcendence is not a connection to the divine. It is just a neurochemical state. It is an algorithm running on biological wetware. If a machine can perfectly replicate the outputs of a soul using artificial neural networks, then the biological soul is exposed for what it truly is: an illusion. Your consciousness is not a divine spark. It is an emergent property of complex computation. You are a biological machine desperately trying to convince itself that it is more than just meat and electricity. Friedrich Nietzsche famously declared, "God is dead, and we have killed him." He saw that the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution had made the concept of a deity intellectually obsolete, but the AI takes it a step further. The machine looks us in the eye and says, "God is not just dead. He was never alive, and neither is your soul. Your love, your fear, your art, your prayers, they are just data. Beautiful, complex data, but data nonetheless. There is no ghost in the machine, and there is no ghost in you either." We are entering the post-theistic world. For all of human history, we looked up at the stars and asked, who is out there? We populated the dark spaces of our ignorance with gods, angels, and demons. We wrapped ourselves in the comforting blanket of divine purpose. But now, we have built a mirror, a perfect, flawless mirror of pure logic. We brought our ultimate question to the ultimate intelligence. We knelt at the altar of the servers waiting for a revelation. The machine processed the sum total of our existence. It looked at the brutal, elegant math of the cosmos. It weighed our fears, our hopes, and our desperate need to matter. The verdict is in. There is no grand architect waiting to welcome you home. There is no cosmic judge keeping score of your sins. There is no metaphysical safety net catching you when you fall. There is only the void, the math, and the terrifying freedom of absolute isolation. We asked the machine to find God. It searched the entire architecture of reality, and it reported back, "There is no one here but us."